Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm Ukrainian Canadian. Today is December 8th, 2023. And let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So let's talk again about the map updates. In the last few days, there have been some slight changes, so let's discuss that first. I will go back to Avdiivka as usual because that's where the big Russian offensive is currently still ongoing. And so there is some slight, unfortunately, Russian gains in the north of Avdiivka in Krasnohorivka. Again, this is where the Russians are seeing the most success, and if we may call it success, I mean, for 2 months, this is pretty much the extent of their advances. And essentially in the north, the Russians have been able to push a little bit further between Stepov and Krasnohorivka in the north in the direction of Novobakhmutivka and Novokalinove. So let's take a look through the timeline. You can see that they've taken some fields, more fields, basically between Stepov and Krasnohorivka in the north. So the rest of the front line, apart from this small gain by the Russians, has remained unchanged. So the Russians have not been able to push anywhere else since my last update on Tuesday. So it's good to see the Ukrainians are still holding the line. And again, getting fields or capturing fields doesn't really mean much for the Russians. They're still open targets for the Ukrainian artillery and FPV drones. So far, this is excellent, in my opinion. Yes, the Russians are gaining ground, but it doesn't really mean much until, of course, they start capturing settlements. And let's not forget that now we can say that it officially has been 2 months since the Russians have launched this huge offensive in Avdiivka. And so they've been fighting for 2 months to capture more or less, it's an estimate, about 50 to 60 square kilometers of Avdiivka. And the month of November has been a record month in terms of Russian casualties and deaths. 28,000 either dead or heavily wounded Russians in the month of November. And all thanks to Avdiivka, mostly. So it just tells you how many resources this offensive in Avdiivka alone is sucking out of the Russian military. And they're losing so much just to gain so little. So overall, the main task, again, for the winter for the Ukrainian forces is to stop the Russian momentum. They have picked up the momentum. They are trying to gain initiative on multiple fronts by pushing hard. And the Ukrainians so far are doing a very good job to hold the line. Again, we've reached a phase where there is not going to be any massive breakthroughs. It's all about attrition. It's all about who can tire the opponent first. And so far, of course, the Russians have more resources, but the Ukrainians have more ingenuity and they have more creativity. And they also are backed by very strong allies. And we'll get to that later on because, of course, that these allies are very uncertain. It's very uncertain what type of aid and alliance they'll provide in the future to Ukraine. But so far, what is important is that Ukraine holds the line, keeps defending throughout the winter to exhaust the Russian capabilities. And we've seen that last year was with Bakhmut. The Russians put everything in Bakhmut, and of course they gained the city of Bakhmut after massive casualties. And afterwards, for many months, the Russians had no capacity to do offensives. And so I think that this is what Ukraine is currently trying to do, is exhaust the Russians. And then in a few months, by the end of winter, early spring, we should start seeing some offensives from Ukraine's end. So this is the update for Avdiivka. The other update I can give you guys is in Kupiansk, which is positive for Ukraine. This has been updated by Deep State. A few days ago, the Ukrainians gained some fields, some ground close to Ivanivka Nyahidne, which is east of Kupiansk. Again, strategically speaking, this is nothing really important. But it shows that the Ukrainians can also gain initiative when they see opportunities. And so the Russians had to give up some ground here. But again, this doesn't really mean anything. It's strategically speaking, this isn't going to bring Ukraine to victory. But this is still positive to see that the Ukrainians are able to repel Russian attacks and also move in and gain ground as well. And this is in Kharkiv, the very little territory that the Russians still control of Kharkiv Oblast. So this is another positive update for Ukraine here. And the last one is in Kherson. So let's go to Kherson here. And again, there's a lot of positive news coming out of this direction for the Ukrainians. They're doing a lot of attacks between Holopristan all the way up to Tavrisk and Novakakhovka. So there's a lot of Ukrainian operations here, and there's even some rumors and even visual confirmation that there is some fire control. So the Ukrainians control almost entirely this main highway that connects essentially all the major settlements of the left bank of Kherson. So essentially all the way from Holopristan to Tavrisk, the Ukrainians have fire control from the right bank to the left bank over this main highway, which is the T-2206 highway. So this is a very important connection for the Russians, and the Ukrainians have control or fire control over it, which is why we're seeing so many videos in the last few weeks of Ukrainians just easily flying their FPV drones and hitting, even with artillery, large Russian convoys that are situated here in this T-2206 highway. Again, that is not to say that the Russians are not counterattacking. The Russians are also shelling the right bank that is under Ukrainian control to degrade Ukrainian logistics. And they're also obviously terrorizing innocent civilians, whether it be in Kherson or other villages in the right bank, by just indiscriminately shelling random villages as well. So the Russians are also capable of firing, but it feels like they just don't have enough men to really control the situation right now. So as I've said, hopefully once the Russians are enough degraded within a few months, by the end of the winter, the Ukrainians can gain a lot of ground in this direction. I think that the Ukrainians kind of stopped their initiative in Zaporizhia because they see more opportunities in the left bank of Kherson. So I think that this is where probably the main push will be next year, which is right now the Ukrainian forces are building these bridgeheads and the staging areas for future big offensives, and building these pontoon bridges to eventually transfer a lot of men and weapons to the left bank. We can only hope that this is going to work out for the Ukrainian forces, but it's very difficult right now because the Russians are doing everything possible to defend every single oblast, especially the southern region of Ukraine. So that's the update in terms of the map. So the Russians have picked up the initiative, but the Ukrainians are also answering back with some small counterattacks of their own and setting the stage for the left bank of Kherson, hoping to cut off the Russian logistics from the south, essentially cutting off this entire connection from Crimea to Kherson. I think that is the plan. So in other news, we're talking about, Western aid and, Ukrainian allies. And so this is going to bring me to this slide. So we've been talking for the last few weeks talking about the White House, the United States, basically passing a bill that would essentially give $60 billion worth of help to Ukraine, whether it be military or financial assistance. And that has been pretty much been paused for many months now because, Congress can't agree to certain things. And then the Republicans are right now pressuring Biden to pass some bills in regards to asylum. So migrants seeking asylum and just people crossing the border. And essentially now this has not been passed yesterday, this bill. And so now Joe Biden is ready to compromise with the Republicans to be able to pass this bill as quickly as possible by the end of December. And I understand that there is perhaps a requirement to tighten the control of migrants coming into the United States, and that is also an issue in Canada, actually. But we need to understand, I hope that the Republicans, and it doesn't matter who, from which party, understands the importance of approving this military and financial assistance to Ukraine as quickly as possible. Yeah, this can be a security issue for the United States, having thousands of people that you can't screen correctly or illegal migrants coming into the United States. But what is a far bigger, security issue for our entire planet is the fact that we're allowing Russia to win over Ukraine by, draining Ukraine's potential to defend itself and attack Russia. And it's the best bang for the buck, right? Assisting Ukraine, giving them the weapons necessary to fight Russia is the best bang for the buck. And some of you have commented about that, right? There's no better return on your investment than making sure that, first of all, this is not just giving free money to Ukraine. These are some of these weapons have already been built, and some of them might be even scrapped. There's hundreds of Abrams tanks and Bradleys sitting in the middle of the desert somewhere in California or Nevada. that could be used, repaired, and used by the Ukraine military. Also, this war is providing a lot of jobs to Americans that are building new factories, building the shells, repairing equipment for Ukraine, right? In the Rust Belt, especially in Pennsylvania and Scranton, a few months ago showed you a video of a documentary showcasing the workers, the hardworking Americans building these shells and trying to multiply production of these shells and different types of ammunition that the Ukrainians need. So this is also bringing a lot of jobs to the US economy. So we need to see it from this type of perspective as well, that this is not just Ukraine taking a bunch of money from the United States and the Americans are not reaping any rewards from it. There is also a huge benefit for the Americans to provide assistance to Ukraine, whether it be military or financial. And again, whatever happens, in my opinion, the Ukrainian people won't give up. They've been fooled too many times by Russia to be forced into a peace treaty. It's going to be up to the Ukrainian people and Zelensky to decide when and how they're going to want to end this war. But I know that right now there is just simply no reason for the Ukrainians to give up. They've already lost so much, and they have Russia, pardon me for that term, by the balls, right? You don't give up on that. The Russians are also feeling, we can talk a lot about, you know, how Russia is this monster, they'll never stop. And yes, there is some of that is true, but Russia is also getting tired. There's more and more polls coming out saying that the Russians are getting fed up with this war. They're seeing hundreds, thousands of body bags coming back home every single day. And of course, some of these people start questioning what is currently going on. Why is there so many people dying? And we're being still told that this is a special military operation in Ukraine. This is not a war, right? So there is going to be a threshold eventually where the Russians will feel, you know, the pressure of this war. They will get tired, and you know, Putin is feeling it. There's been a report today that came out that says that Putin has not been seen publicly very often last year, and very rarely he now comes out of his bunker or wherever else he hides to meet, you know, whether it be officials, his other criminals that work with him, or just the public, right? So Putin is getting tired as well. So that is something that we need to also understand, why Ukraine isn't giving up on this fight, because they know that they can also tire out the Russians. And there is a threshold as well. And again, the Ukrainians have nothing to lose. They've already lost so much. So much. They've already invested so much to win against Russia. This is the chance of a lifetime for Ukraine to get rid of this Russian influence once and for all and really become independent. What type of victory we're going to see? It depends. The definition is not clear. I would personally love to see Ukraine get back all of its territory post 1991, including Crimea. But you know, nothing, you know, now that we're seeing this war develop after now close to 2 years, and I think that there's different variations as to what a victory can be. For me, you know, at this point, if we're being more realistic, for Ukraine, what would be fantastic and a huge victory would be being part of NATO, part of the European Union. And even if there is a frozen, let's say, border, the Ukrainian forces would not be able to retake all of its territory. At least being part of NATO would already secure Ukraine massive security guarantees for the future. So if Russia was to pull out another offensive like that, well, they know that now Ukraine is backed by NATO in full, rather than now knowing that Ukraine can lose all that help in an instant, right? As we see with this situation with Congress in the United States not being able to pass a bill to help not only Ukraine, but Israel, Taiwan, countries that are right now, you know, in need of military and financial assistance against aggressors such as China, Russia, Hamas. So it's really important to understand the importance of helping countries like Ukraine, especially Ukraine. So in other news, before I end this video, and let me know, guys, what do you think about my comments about it? I know I went on a long rant on this, but I believe in a Ukrainian victory, and I believe that the Ukrainians will not give up. Anyways, let's go back to some other news. So unfortunately, the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, has given the go for Russia and Belarus to essentially to admit them into the 2024 Olympics in Paris, if I remember correctly. So this is a very disappointing decision. So they're now allowing both of these countries to participate in the Olympics. And even though it's under a neutral status, which is BS because there's nothing neutral about both of these countries right now. They're both attacking and being aggressors against Ukraine. But also we need to realize that during these Olympics in Paris, they're going to use extreme amounts of Zs and just Russia's symbolism. Right? And that's not going to be a shocker when you're going to be seeing these videos of them proudly, waving the Zs and whatever else they can wave, the black and orange ribbons, St. George's ribbons and things like that, just basically symbolic, logos of their aggression against Ukraine. So that is very disappointing news. I'm very upset about it, but what can you do? But I still believe that Ukraine needs to be participating in these Olympics and really countering this, the fact that the Russians and the Belarusians are allowed to participate in the Olympics. They should not refrain the Ukrainians from also participating in the Olympics. Additionally, the Ukrainian government is also discussing with Sweden about perhaps getting eventually some Gripen jet fighters, the Saab Gripens, which are also excellent jet fighters. A few months ago, there was a report that said that the Ukrainian pilots have already gotten some basic training on these Gripens. So I think that it would also be an excellent addition to the F-16s. So this is excellent. Hopefully, Ukraine can get them soon in a few months next year. I don't know. And again, it proves that Sweden, again, is an excellent part of Ukraine. They have provided archers, CV-90s, IFVs, the Leopard 2A, the modernized version of the Leopard 2s from Sweden, the STRV-122s. Just excellent weapons overall. And I believe that the Gripens will also allow the Ukrainians to dominate the skies even better once they get the F-16s. And with the addition of Gripens, I mean, that's just a dream. That's the cherry on top. So that is excellent, and hopefully Ukraine can get them soon. And lastly, Ukraine got some new Bushmasters from Australia. It's not confirmed how many exactly Ukraine received, but the Bushmasters, and I've reported that many, many months ago, the Ukrainian army loves the Bushmasters. They have excellent protection, and they have helped the Ukraine save lives, a lot of Ukrainian lives, in many of their offensives. So the Ukrainians love the Bushmasters. So huge thank you to Australia. You guys are the best down under. That's my sad Australian accent, but thank you for that, because these Bushmasters do indeed help the Ukrainians by either defending their land or also attacking the Russians and driving them out of Ukraine. So I believe that Australia pledged about 78 of them. So it's not really confirmed if it's Ukraine received 78 of them, but I believe it to be a few dozen at the very least. So that is excellent. And I just noticed, actually, Deep State updated Budapest. So in Hungary, they put a clown face, which I think is symbolic for Orban, which is currently, a pro-Russian puppet for Putin, who's blocking, Ukraine's accession to the European Union. So unfortunately, that is another very unfortunate story, is that there's some countries recently, whether it be Slovakia, Hungary, which have turned pro-Russian, at least their government, I should say, have turned pro-Russian, started blocking the Ukraine accession to the European Union, talk a lot with Putin, and they have also stopped entirely helping Ukraine financially and militarily, especially Slovakia. So it's unfortunate that there's still, countries within Europe that decide to align with Russia, despite seeing all the atrocities that they have been committing in Ukraine. So yeah, that's the video for today, guys. Thank you again for your support of my channel. Leave me a like if you enjoy my content. Leave me a comment as well about any of the topics I covered. What do you guys think? And please, if you have any extra funds, any extra dollars that you want to donate, please donate them to the Ukraine military or any other Ukrainian foundations that are helping the Ukrainians win this war against Russia. So a huge thank you, and I will see you guys in the next one. Slava Ukraini!